Welcome to Chicago State University on CAN TV. My name is Dr. Kelly Harris. I am the interim dean of the Honors College and associate professor of African American Studies at Chicago State. This is the last in our series of interviews with people who are affiliated with Chicago State, and today we are happy to have Mr. Charles Preston, a graduate of Chicago State University. What year did you graduate, Charles?
Last year. Graduated last year, 2017.
Seems like a long time ago. Seems like you've been going a long time. Mm-hmm. So tell the people, what did you major in at Chicago State University?
Yeah. African American Studies, what every black person should major in.
Thank you. And what else?
And I've also have a minor in CMAC Communications, Media Arts, and theater.
So tell us a little bit, tell the audience out here a little bit about yourself. Were you from Chicago, right?
Yeah, not born and raised, but raised since I was the age of about 4. Okay. In Chicago, grew up in the Roseland neighborhood, went to elementary school, high school, and college in Roseland.
What were the early influences on your life?
Earlier influences, I would say, obviously my family. Mm-hmm. I come from a very strong mother who was a Christian, who went to Trinity United Church of Christ. So early on, I was hearing sermons
under the leadership. Go ahead.
Dr. Jeremiah Wright, Jr. So I was getting that type of conditioning early on. Other influences, I would say some teachers here and out in high school and elementary school.
What high school did you go to?
I went to Gwendolyn Brooks College Prep.
Okay.
Yeah, I was a bad student during my first 2 years.
Bad behavior-wise or grade-wise, or both?
I would say mainly grade, but I was pretty bad my freshman year. Like, I don't know how I passed freshman year of high school, to be honest. Like, I missed a lot of days.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Running the streets.
What changed you? What began to change you? Because if you were going to Trinity.
Yeah.
Were the sermons by Reverend Wright, because he's a very powerful person.
Right.
Did you recognize at a young age that he was powerful, or did that something you learned later on in life?
I think I recognized it was powerful in that moment because it didn't take long for me to see like other preachers don't preach like this.
Right.
But as I grew older, I'm starting to recognize the importance of the theology he was teaching.
Okay.
And how that came from James Cone, and like how it's kind of a rare theology, like very centered on blackness.
And for the listening audience, he's talking about black liberation theology.
Yeah. And it kind of grounded me, I think, but I started to stray away from the church because of, I guess, trying to connect the spiritual element of it, like the belief in God and praying to the plight of black people.
Okay.
That I was seeing. You know, we like when your mom goes through things, you see friends pass, you start to question, the existence of like, is there a God?
Sure.
But as far as like the social element and speaking to the plight of black people, I appreciated the theology.
When you first left high school, what college did you first attend?
I attended the University of Missouri, in Columbia.
Okay.
That was culture shock. It was culture shock because I grew up in an all black community,
right?
And I'm going to this white college town, and I was not prepared for anything really.
Yeah.
I didn't even really want to be in college. My mom just said like it's either work a job, military, or college. And so I'm like, I'm not going to fight no white man's war. I'm not doing that. I was already working. And I'm like, I'm too smart to be out just doing fast food. Let me go into college. But I went in there.
There are smart people to do fast food, but
there are. But like, yeah. I'm not meaning to downplay the low income workers. Right. There are plenty of low income workers who are brilliant. But I was saying, but my mind at 18,
sure, was like that.
It was like that, yeah. Okay. And so, I just did the cool thing at the moment. Like all of my high school seniors out of Brooks was going to college, and I'm like, I don't want to be left behind. And so I get there, and I'm seeing like racist incidents. My roommate is borderline racist because he has this racist friend who will come and like ask me all types of like
Black questions about.
Yeah, questions about black people, but he would do it in a way that he was poking at me, and so like in my mind I had this dissonance of like, okay, do I turn up on him and show him the stereotypical angry black man and validate what he already thinks,
Right.
or do I remain passive and be just a passive black man who's meek and humble and everything? So I'm caught in between. Yeah, that, and then I will go to like my friends would like parties, and you go to white frat parties. They say the N word like loosely. Yeah, it was just something I wasn't ready for because coming up in Roseland, you typically see white people in positions of power.
Right.
So either they're the doctor, the police officer, or teacher. That's it. Mm-hmm. And that's all I knew him as. And so like once I started, being from the black community, immersed in like a white student body, it's a struggle. It's a culture shock.
So you leave Mizzou and come to Chicago State University.
Yeah.
All right. You meet.
Didn't want to go.
Didn't want to go to Chicago State.
No, it was last option. I'm like, might as well go to the school up the street.
So you came with an attitude.
Yeah. Cause I was like, I came disappointed. I thought like I couldn't make it at Mizzou, and Chicago State was a fallback plan.
But then you meet Kwesi.
Yeah, I met
Kwesi Harris.
I met Kwesi. It took me a while to meet Kwesi. I was avoiding him for the longest.
Why were you avoiding him?
Because I never met a black person like Kwesi. Like Kwesi would come up to you. He would shout at you from like all the way down.
Yes, he would.
Like 500 feet away.
Yeah.
And it was kind of off-putting because I never met a man so warm and so open and ready to engage in conversation and thought. Without having like an ulterior motive.
So you didn't understand it.
Like I did not understand it, and I didn't understand the value of male elders. I didn't grow around like men as elders. All my elders are women, and not to say like women can't be good leadership and elders.
Okay.
But it's a different dynamic when you have like an old man, talking to you and instilling wisdom.
But he wasn't an old man. But.
No, he wasn't an old man, but he was very much younger than a lot of folks out here.
Yeah,
and younger
very
than some of our
wise.
students,
A lot of experience.
but very wise and carried himself.
And tell the audience what he was over, what center he was over.
He was over the African American Male Resource Center, and he was, I guess, created our group named Timbo, Teaching and Educating Men of Black Origin, named at Timbo is a key Swahili name for elephant. And we revered elephants as like leaders and guides, as a metaphor for like the men we were trying to build. And in Timbo meetings, Kwesi would constantly like instill in us all sorts of black history, talk about our ancestry, try to engage us with African identity, and to ground us in that. But also, Timbo was also a resource. It was a network for young black male students to lean on. If we needed books, if we needed supplies, if we needed if we needed to borrow some cash, Kwesi would not hesitate to help us. And he's truly missed. And I was like reminiscing on him yesterday, especially during like the budget crisis at Chicago State University, because our first marches, Kwesi was out there with cancer and all, marching with us. And that just goes to show you like the type of person he was. And during the whole process of the budget impasse, where our student leaders were fighting for a new budget from the state, Kwesi was constantly in the student leader's ear and sending us text messages. I'm talking about like every day, just words of inspiration. And at times you'd be like, man, Kwesi sent a lot of messages. But when he's gone, you look back over him and you miss him, and you realize no one else is doing that for you. No one is taking care of you like Kwesi did. So.
And why did you major in African American Studies and minor in Communications and Media?
So like when I was at Mizzou, I thought I was going to be like the next Jay-Z, a venture capitalist or something. I just wanted money, so business was my major.
Were you into rapping too? Or did you rap?
No.
Okay.
No, I just wanted the money.
Okay.
Like I just thought of myself in a suit, 9 to 5,
Hustling.
buying stocks, selling stocks, whatever. I just wanted that type of Wall Street lifestyle. Then I realized these numbers ain't for me. So I went into, I changed my major over there to psychology.
Okay.
I was good at it. It just came natural. Like without trying, I got like a B+ in the class. Like this is me skipping class and everything, but without trying, I got it. But then I went to once I got at Chicago State, my major was still psychology. Then I took one of your classes, and it stuck with me. I think it was the intro class, and I'm like, I've never heard anything like this that also like affirms like my passions for Black people.
African American Studies does,
and it truly affirmed, why I do this, or like why I'm at where I am today. And I saw it as kind of like a weapon or a tool to use in my community. A lot of the things we talk about in African American studies is the everyday lives of Black people and how their behaviors and their thoughts, and looking at it from different perspectives and scopes. And I think now more than ever, it's a crisis in America for Black people, and there's always have been, and that's why African American studies is so important.
So during your experience at Chicago State, you introduced to Timbo, you introduced to African American Studies, and at some point in your academic career, you realized that all this knowledge is nothing without action.
Right.
Correct?
Right.
So
That's one of the things.
You start getting engaged and involved in things.
Yeah. What propelled me? I think I'm always a person about action. I always want to do. And one of the things that annoys me about academia is how many people just study, write books and books and books, but never apply those teachings in the community. Because I can see it, like taking African American Studies class at night and then taking the bus home to Roseland. There's a lot that you see.
Sure.
And you want to apply it as quickly as possible. So I guess what propelled me is I would say I really got heavy after the death of Trayvon Martin, and that's when I started attending like protests. But once the death of Mike Brown happened, I told myself like I'm not leaving a protest without joining an organization. Like I'm going to make the connection and continue to do this work, because it's enough for people to always come out and shout at the problem and take the streets for the problem, and that work is heavily important. I think people should be taking the streets over an array of issues.
Sure.
But that tactic, that action has to be connected to a larger network and organization in which we can use these tactics to win whatever goal an organized group is trying to go to.
And you was the Black Youth Project the first organization you joined?
Yeah, Black Youth Project 100. I was the co-chair, the communications co-chair of the Chicago chapter. It's a national organization, but I was the communications co-chair, and that entailed me being a media person. That's where my media handling, my media skills at CSU played a part in addressing the media, because one thing we want to do is like frame a narrative in our own words, instead of reading headliners that say like protesters were rowdy and they don't give a name to who was protesting. They don't really give the exact reasons as to why they were protesting. They won't, and that's the thing white media tends to do. And so we really wanted to start crafting narratives from our own. So
the Black Youth Project, when around the time you joined, is kind of ground zero for this youth activism in Chicago?
I think it played a big part in addressing a lot of the police brutality issues. I'm not going to say it's the grounding of like youth activism, because I think there's a number of groups that fight.
It was one among many groups.
But yeah, in the Black Lives Matter movement in scope, in which police brutality, I guess, takes center stage, I would say yes, BYP 100 is one of the groups that were on the front line of it.
So you in BYP 100, you in Timbo, you are an activist on and off campus, fair to say?
Yeah.
Then you decide to start your own not organization, but own
Thing.
activist thing. Can you talk to the people about
So I started Church on the Nine, which is an open mic. It's a community open mic that's been going on 3 years at 79th and Cottage Grove on Sundays from like 7 p.m. till people just leave the corner. And what I wanted to do with that, like it was created out of me being angry in the moment of like looking at the disparity of resources on the South Side. We don't have, in comparison to like Wicker Park or like the North Side, we don't have a lot of places in which we can freely express ourselves artistically, politically, socially, without having to pay a fee.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons I wanted to create a space for people to do that, but also it was like in protest to like street laws and street performance laws. Like in Chicago, I needed a permit for a Church on the Nine, but I never got one because I just thought the law was idiotic. And so like African American studies, Martin Luther King has a quote about unjust laws.
Right.
And so I thought the law was unjust, and so like it was a protest to be out there on the corner with no permit, with all these people gathered, doing poetry, rap, singing, dancing, even having debates and political debates. We would talk about like feminism. We would talk about Barack Obama and what has he done, or if he's done anything. And then lastly, it was also like a challenge to the church. So when I say Church on the Nine, I thought of church back to the beginnings of like Africans on plantations and escaping plantations to go out into the woods and to practice their Western African spirituality. And I thought of church on the Nine like that, like deinstitutionalized church, but also critiquing the church as to say like you need to come out the walls of the church because your people are out here on the corner.
Just creating community.
Yeah.
Right, which is very needed. You also now have been working with young men.
Yeah. So one of the other groups that arose out of the Black Lives Matter movement, I guess specifically in Chicago, is the Sada's Daughters. And so this is a group that is very radical, but very communal, and who I appreciate a lot. They operate from this Black queer feminist lens, but they don't just go to protests and they do that, like they throw down, they do direct actions,
right, no question.
But they also start community gardens, and they also engage in political education with young girls. And so what happened was one of their leaders, Paige May, started a community garden in Washington Park with these girls, with these Black girls. And what happens when you start a garden with girls, boys come around.
Right.
And so the boys will start asking, oh, can we help with this? Can we do this? And sooner or later, Paige was like, I need a program for these boys.
Sure.
And so she contacted me, and she said, Charles, all you have to do is go out there, come to our headquarters, facilitate. We'll provide the curriculum. But if you think there's any changes that's needed to the curriculum, let us know, and just give them feedback. And so this was a spectacular program, because you had Washington Park boys, so it's hyper-local, it's local, and they will come into the program, they will be fed from a local caterer, and they will also be paid $10 every time, like they have a stipend of $10. And so they would sit there and learn a curriculum based on Black queer feminism, but that also like spoke to like the Black Panthers, and also was trying to like integrate different things like hip hop and breaking down lyrics and teaching them their history, but also teaching them what it means to like build power.
Do you know enough about hip hop and break down lyrics?
I know some. I think there's levels to knowledge of hip hop, because
I'm just messing with you.
all heads they be like, you don't know nothing about Curtis Blow. You know,
recite a Rakim song. Oh man! All right, so how do you define yourself? Make sure you're sitting in the screen.
How do I define myself? I would say like I am an activist and organizer, and journalist, and I would say activist in the truest sense of the word.
Pause. Because we left out a key part.
Okay.
So we're going to come back to how he defines himself, but a key thing that I left out is that Charles is a journalist.
Yeah.
So talk about your journalism and your writing, what you've been doing.
So I'm a contributing writer for the Chicago Defender. And so my piece is mainly centered community events, community activism, but mainly politics.
Okay.
That's what I'm centered on, and I really like writing about resistance because I think people don't write about communal resistance enough, and it's featured in our papers, and if it is, it's like 1 or 2 lines as protesters, and so that's why I tend to focus on.
Okay. Now, back to defining yourself.
Yeah, activist, organizer, I don't know, I would say like a black Renaissance man. Because I still do spoken word,
Okay.
So I'm an artist. I know how to host spaces. I know how to write. I facilitate it, so that requires a teaching skill. And I'm an activist. I'm out here amplifying the works of others and causes, and yeah, I'm everywhere though.
Where do you see yourself continuing to go from here?
Really expanding the work that I'm doing, that I'm currently doing. Trying to figure out ways in which I can reach a broader audience, but also remain hyperlocal. I think when you focus on your base and focus on Chicago, good things can come about. So I believe that entails more writing for me, probably with different publications and whatnot. And also, I don't know, I was thinking about starting my own organization.
Okay.
So I can have many Ida B. Wells running around.
Talk to the young people out here who may be thinking about attending college, who may be juniors or seniors in high school. What would you tell them about college in general, and why going to Chicago State should be an option for them?
Number one, don't play games in high school because you're going to need those grades to get money for scholarships. And those are in handy, but I think you should attend Chicago State University. Number one, because it's a very communal university. There's a big family at Chicago State that awaits each newcomer, and I'm not saying it's easy. Of course, I'm not saying the coursework is easy, but what you do have is a handful of professionals and staff and professors who will do their utmost to help you out. Like I've never seen. Comparing Mizzou to Chicago State, the professors at Chicago State cared not only about their students, but the community they're in as well. You should definitely come to the African American Studies. Yeah. As you can see, like I became a journalist with an African American Studies degree. I didn't go to J school, and I'm also, among other things, with an African American Studies degree. So it's an interdisciplinary field. And I think it can enrich you, and when you're grounded in who you are and what your people have been about, I think good things could come to fruition.
So you started off wanting to be Jay-Z.
Yeah. I started off wanting to be Jay-Z, then turned into Amiri Baraka.
Well, hold on now. So I just can't leave that line. People have no idea. There's a lot of people listening who have no idea who Amiri Baraka is.
That's good. They need to Google. They got them smartphones. Sometimes we just need to drop names.
We can't tell everybody. Can't tell them everything.
Yeah,
that's what he's saying.
We need to drop names because people like Cheikh Anta Diop. Like people don't know who that is, and that's why African American Studies is needed because everything that you see here, what activists are proposing, legislation that is proposed, it's like it's all been done before. It's been reworked.
Do the activists realize that?
I think some do.
Okay.
Some do their homework, and others they think they're the brand spanking new, whatever.
Right.
And I think it points to our arrogance, but it also points to how the system has crippled us in terms of like education and where we're not learning about our past heroes. Yeah.
You see that as a major problem still in the education system?
Oh, most definitely, especially in CPS. I don't know why Ida B. Wells isn't as celebrated in CPS as.
In our last minute, though, you also went downstate to talk to people who were incarcerated.
Yeah. I went to Statesville.
Statesville.
Under a program by Erica Meaners, and just talk to them and get a feel for them. And why I tell you this is that these brothers, they're educated and they know what's going on in the streets, and they just need people to fight for them.
closing words from Mr. Charles Preston. First of all, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, no problem, no problem.
What are your closing thoughts?
My closing thoughts is please pay attention to what's happening in Chicago. Attend Chicago State University. It's election season. If you're not voting, consider it and push other people to vote. There's a number of things on the ballot, so make sure you do that. And
apply to Chicago State University.
Apply to Chicago State University. Yeah.